Joining us once again on the program is the nation's DC correspondent, Ken Klippenstein. How's it going?
Hey, John. Good to be with you.
Good to have you here. Did not want to get too far away from election day without touching base with our favorite investigative journalist. So first of all, before we launch into how this might or might not affect your job, as someone who has been doing a great job of trying to keep multiple different areas of the US government accountable during this time, what do you make of both the election results and the current scrum we're in to actually have them be accepted?
Well, I think that we're all lucky that the election wasn't closer because the legal basis for the president's attempts to try to call into question the results are going to be hard to do since Biden won 3 or 4 states that Trump needed to win in order to win the election. But with all that being said, we're seeing that Mitch McConnell comes out in support of President Trump's refusal to accept the refusal to concede the election. So what we're seeing is Republican support for the president against this narrative that Trump is uniquely different from the rest of the Republicans. The Republican Party is decent and separate from him. So that's sort of stunning to see, given that the election was not really that close.
Yeah, I mean, we have Mike Pompeo earlier today saying there's going to be a smooth transition to a second term of the Trump administration. And obviously Kayleigh will say whatever Kayleigh's gonna say, but you have Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio is trying to weaselly be we're gonna count the legal votes, but we know what that actually means. That's wink, wink, some of them aren't legal, everybody. Maybe there's a lot, maybe it's enough. So yeah, Trump, if the idea is that Trump is different in some way from these others, Trump at least is from hiding making this case. They're all going before the cameras and making this case. They're arguably worse in this. But so far, based on what you know about DC, your political experience, we knew that they were going to try theoretically to challenge the results. At this point, does it seem likely to work?
I don't believe so. But again, what's so amazing is that seems to have no effect whatsoever on how aggressively Trump is going to go ahead and say I won or the results are illegitimate. It seems like Biden could have won every state and he'd still be saying this. This is the kind of behavior I would have thought would happen if maybe it was like Bush and Gore in 2000, where there's one state and there's a couple thousand votes difference, but instead there's 4 states that he needed to win.
Yeah.
And the difference is in at least the tens of thousands in many cases.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to go a little bit into your job. So I've had a bit of time to sort of think about how Biden becoming president is going to affect whatever it is that I do, whatever this job is. And it did take some thinking because I can barely remember a time when Donald Trump wasn't president. I did this job for years then, but I don't remember it at all. So in what will your job as an investigative journalist who accrues sources in DHS and ICE and all of that, what ways will it change? What ways will it stay the same?
A lot of my sources tend to not be political in the sense of that they're not partisan. So I don't think that my relationship with sources is going to change, and that actually insulates me from a lot of the access tendencies that a lot of reporters become beholden to. That being said, it's been nice for liberals to discover that they have moral compunctions with child detention facilities under ICE over the last 4 years, and that's not to say that the conditions now were identical to Obama. They're considerably worse, but a lot of the same institutions, the sort of building blocks for what Trump ended up constructing were there during Obama, and it was much harder as a reporter. My focus has not really changed that much. If you look at my reporting prior to the Trump administration, I was talking about a lot of the same things. I can say that now, a whole lot of people paid attention. My hope is just that going forward, that will persist.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but my concerns about the child separation and stuff, already, even before inauguration, I don't care about it anymore. No, I'm joking, but unfortunately, some people in the media might actually forget about that. So really fast, I don't know how much time you've had so far to really touch base with your sources, many of which will likely transition over to the Biden administration. They're not necessarily that top level political appointees, they're civil servants. Do they expect that in some of these areas, in DHS, in surveillance of journalists, in immigration, deportations, things like that, are they expecting a big change?
The impression I get is an overwhelming sense of relief that at least the worst is going to be gone. And many of these guys have been inside for years and years, and so they're not naive about, thinking what kinds of things a politician's saying in the election context is going to be exactly what ends up happening. So they're pretty clear-eyed about all of that. But all that being said, there's still a sense of relief because the stuff that's happened under President Trump, not just with respect to actual, policy that we're talking about on immigration and things like that, but just gutting the civil service. He issued an executive order recently that removes effectively a lot of the protections that civil servants have. That is something that Biden is very likely to reverse, and that there's a lot of relief completely apart from politics. Just because then you can't be fired for political reasons just because your boss doesn't like what you're doing or that you're not towing the party line on things. There's a sense of relief about a lot of this sort of institutional oversight and those sorts of things that are not necessarily partisan in nature and things that people be familiar with. That just makes their jobs a whole lot easier. And I think redounds to the benefit of the American people because then they can do their jobs with integrity and not have to worry about there being the same type of really aggressive retaliation of the sort that we've seen consistently in this administration. So I would say, they're clear-eyed about it, but still glad that the worst is going to be gone.
Yeah, I want to talk more about Biden in just a moment, but we are still in the transition period, although technically it hasn't really started because the Trump administration has blocked Biden from really getting that going. But during this time, I'm imagining you probably have your hands full because every presidency, no matter how much we might like the president, on the way out, they get a lot done in the last few weeks. So how are you approaching that period? Like they did this, as you said, they did this change to the way the civil service works where hypothetically they can fire people a little bit easier. He's not gonna be around to be their boss anymore, but he can still fire people on his way out. They could, there might be some sort of looting of the federal treasury. That's a fear that people have. How are you watching for these moves that are gonna be done in the last 2 months or so?
Well, I haven't had to put much effort into it because instead I've been getting frantic, calls and messages from my sources inside who, this type of environment affects each agency and sub-agency differently. They're reaching out to me expressing fear over the stuff you said. In addition to that, you have the president firing the defense secretary, a very high-level individual who only served there since earlier this year, if I remember correctly.
March, I think, maybe, but
yeah. Replaced him with someone from the National Counterterrorism Center. And my intelligence friends tell me that this person was very junior, doesn't have a lot of experience to be running the war, the premier war department of not just the US, but the biggest one on the planet. Someone with very little experience and who's known to be, cozy with the White House and a friend of the White House. So, that is extremely concerning to them. And it's not just him. There's been reporting that suggests that he's considering firing the FBI director. He removed the general counsel to the NSA, which is responsible for all this, with the Stone disclosures. We learned a lot about the sorts of surveillance that they conduct. What I'm being told is that that could mean that the president is going to try to leak or his party leak NSA intercepts to friends in Congress, perhaps about Joe Biden, perhaps about enemies in the Democratic Party, about who knows what. Because the question is, why remove a highly technocratic position like the NSA General Counsel? That's not someone that you see on TV all the time. This is a legal official that tells NSA, here's what we can legally do. They have a lot of fear about that, and I would say that extends generally. Is he going to try to retaliate against people that he perceives as enemies in the final weeks of his presidency? And with these civil service protections gutted, they are not going to be able to protect themselves, and then it's going to be incumbent on Biden to rehire them and put them back in. And I have to say, if you're someone with a lot of integrity and you're speaking out against problems in agencies, no president wants that. I'm sorry, let's just be real. They don't want someone that's going to raise concerns about your own misconduct generally. I'm not saying Biden wouldn't reinstate people, but there's a general aversion to people that raise the red flag about the integrity, the conduct of these agencies.
Yeah, and I guess we're gonna have to wait and see over the next few years what a Biden administration is like. Is it going to be, is it gonna be Obama-esque in terms of its relationship with the media, its relationship with investigative journalists? We don't know for sure, and I don't even know to what extent your sources can help you to predict, but do you have any sort of expectations as we go into the next administration in terms of how transparent things will be? Will there be a change to the way FOIAs are managed? I mean, from your tweets, it seems like there's a likelihood that our sun will eventually gutter out into a brown dwarf before some of your FOIAs are actually managed under the Trump administration. What are some of your expectations in terms of how Biden will interact with individuals such as yourself?
I think you'll generally see a moderate improvement under the present administration. One of the problems with somebody like Trump, who's so good at just hijacking the media narrative with whatever crazy soundbite he's issued, is that there's not as much attention paid to the technical nature of the ways that he's undermining government and enhancing the White House's power. So, to give you an example, I think that there will be a lot more interfacing with Congress, for instance. Congress is really the only democratic oversight we have of the intelligence community, and the very spooky stuff that they do in secret, a lot of which is necessary to keep secret. But then how do you, have oversight of that? Well, you give security clearances to Congress people and their staff to be able to look at these things and say, is this rational? If it's not, we're going to then hand it to the press. Trump, his way of handling that is just not to interface with Congress. He just doesn't respond to questions from them. I've talked to very powerful Congress people. There've been cases where Republicans want to know things, his own party, and he won't produce things. And the only legal mechanism they have at that point is the subpoena if you're the Senate, and in some cases the House. But that's that can be a high bar to clear, and it's time consuming, and they have limited resources. So I think even just having a president that believes in the co-equal branch of government that is Congress, and in my opinion, one of our most democratic branch, because we have a direct effect on who staffs it, and it's not something every 4 years. And they don't need $1 billion to run like the president does. Just having someone who believes in the legitimacy of that institution, as in my opinion, Trump does not. That's going to see a whole lot more transparency. FOIA will improve. Two, again, I agree with my sources. I try to be clear-eyed about this. The improvement is going to be, moderate. It's not going to be, dramatic or, some whole new world. But just to have, the worst edges of this kind of administration rounded off is going to help a lot, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that metaphor is actually quite a good way to think about it. And it might be, I think everyone pretty much agrees that things are about to go a little bit more back to normal. Some of the norms are going to return, but normal does not mean great. And so thankfully, launching into this new period, we will have Ken Klippenstein out there doing the good work. And Ken, as always, really appreciate your reporting. Can't wait to see what you dig up under our new overlords.
Excited to do it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, everybody definitely go take a look at Ken's work. It's available over at The Nation. Ken, as always, thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.